For years, Apple was untouchable. And now, sales are dropping, iPhone demand declining, weaker launches, innovation is stalling, and lawsuits are piling up. So tell me, what happens when the biggest name in tech begins to fall? Let's go. People forget how insane Apple used to be. In the late 90s and 2000s, Apple wasn't just a tech company, Apple was the culture. Steve Jobs didn't launch products, he launched revolutions. iMac, iPod, iPhone, iPad. These weren't updates, they were seismic shifts that rewired entire industries from the ground up. Jobs was obsessed with one thing, delighting the customer. Not shareholders, not Wall Street, not margins, customers. That's why in 1997, when Apple was inches from death, he slashed 20 messy product lines down to 4. 4! And then turned the iMac into a cultural movement. He didn't follow the business textbooks. He didn't listen to Michael Dell telling him to shut the company down. He didn't listen to Larry Ellison saying Apple should ditch hardware. Jobs bet on hardware and became the most important hardware visionary of the modern era. And I equals the receipts prove it. Apple stock grew 11,400% during his 14-year comeback. Cash reserves soared to $27 billion. With a B! Apple became the most innovative brand on earth, dropping a major new category every couple years. But what nobody wants to talk about, the real shift, the beginning of their collapse didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened in 2011 when Jobs told Tim Cook, "Don't ask what Steve would do, just do what's right." The problem, right means something entirely different when the person defining it changes. Jobs believed products create profits. Cook believes profits justify products. That one philosophical shift is where today's chaos truly began.
God, okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the
Everybody
procedure,
stay
everyone?
calm.
What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Fast forward a decade, and you'll see a company that once invented the future, not struggling to defend the present. But to understand how the empire began cracking, you have to look at what Apple became under Cook, and why the machine that once inspired the world started running on autopilot. The gears were already turning, and the consequences were inevitable. When Cook took the wheel, Apple didn't fall apart overnight. In fact, Wall Street celebrated him. The operational king, the supply chain assassin, the guy who could squeeze efficiency out of a stone. But here's where the plot twists. Cook optimized everything. Products, processes, launches, manufacturing. But the biggest optimization wasn't technical, it was financial. Within 7 months of becoming CEO, he did something Jobs refused to do for decades: dividends and massive stock buybacks. Apple planned to spend $45 billion over the course of 3 years. They ended up spending $80 billion. Investors loved it. Stock shot from $17 to $27 by 2015. Buffett poured in $1 billion, his first major tech investment ever, because for once, Apple wasn't a product mystery. It was a predictable money printer. But this new stability had a hidden cost. Innovation slowed just enough that people shrugged until they didn't. Look at the pattern. 2014 to 17, iPhone 6, 6S, 7, 8. All nearly identical. 2011 to 2024, R&D spending grew, but not at the pace of Google, Amazon, Meta, or Microsoft. Apple instead spent $110 billion on buybacks in 2024, but only $30 billion on R&D. Amazon spent nearly triple that on innovation.
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Meanwhile, the design culture that once fueled Apple's magic dismantled. Jony Ive's influence faded. Finance executives gained power. New product categories slowed. Accessories stagnated for a decade. And the Magic Mouse still changes from the bottom. What are we doing? Then prices exploded. iPhones went from $650 to $1,200 flagships. Budget iPhones jumped 40%. Average selling price soared from $657 per phone to $974. Margins went up, sure, but customer trust quietly went down. And here's the kicker. A company can only trade innovation for predictability for so long before the market punishes them. And that punishment came faster than anyone realized. By 2024 and 2025, the cracks turned into seismic fractures. Apple lost the number one company spot for the first time in years, sliding right behind Microsoft, then Nvidia, dropping 28% of its value in just 4 months. That's $1.1 trillion evaporated, gone.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
At the same time, products began feeling, well, stale. Not bad, but not inspiring. Not take my money, more like, okay, I guess. iPhones looked the same for half a decade. iPads barely evolved. AirPods Max, still the same. Magic Keyboard, 10 years. Zero redesign. Only one new category shipped since 2019, Vision Pro. And even that only sold half the units Apple projected. Customers began noticing the subscription creep. iCloud upgrades, Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, Apple Fitness Plus, Apple Care Plus. People felt nickeled and dimed. Updates slowed devices. Battery throttling scandals resurfaced. Lawsuits exploded. Epic Games, DOJ antitrust, EU regulation. Look, this list keeps going. And then came Apple Intelligence, the biggest open loop of all. Delayed, inconsistent, partially fabricated demos, features pushed back from 2024 to 2025 to sometime 2026 and then 27, maybe. Siri is already behind Google and Amazon, which quite frankly became a running joke. And here's a crazy data point most people don't realize. Google has over 1 million AI chips. Microsoft, 500,000. Meta, 150,000. Apple, around 50,000. Most over 5 years old. You cannot win the AI race with a bicycle while your competitors are showing up in fighter jets. The real punchline? Apple had the money to invest, but their finance team killed $10 billion expansion in AI hardware while approving $77 billion in stock buybacks this same year. And listen, if you made it this far, this is the kind of content I go deep on consistently. So if you're into the raw, no BS truth about tech, business, and the moves behind the moves, consider subscribing. It genuinely helps this kind of content survive. Now, let's get into the implosion that forced Apple to finally confront the consequences of its own choices. This is where Apple's empire truly started wobbling. Siri, Apple's once revolutionary voice assistant, became the anchor dragging the ship. In 2017, studies showed Siri answered only 62% of questions accurately. Google was at 90%. Amazon Alexa matched Google. Apple never caught up. Why? Their tech was outdated from day one. Siri was built on rule-based systems from 2011, not transformer models. That meant Apple wasn't just behind, they were still living in a time with dinosaurs.
We're gonna make a fortune with this place.
When ChatGPT dropped in 2022, it wasn't just a computer, it was a revelation. It did everything Siri was supposed to do. Suddenly, customers expected more from AI, and Apple couldn't deliver. Inside the company, the panic was real. Apple Intelligence had to ship in 2024 to calm shareholders. But the tech wasn't ready. Former Siri team members say much of the demo was cobbled together or simulated. Apple denied it, but the delays told the truth. Examples? Siri revamp delayed from October 2024, early 2025, sometime in 2026. Internally, teams say 2027 is more realistic. AI notifications had to be removed after they began summarizing headlines inaccurately. One headline was twisted into fake news about someone shooting themselves. Then the lawsuits hit. A federal case in San Jose claimed Apple knowingly advertised features that didn't exist. Meanwhile, competitors were exploding forward. Microsoft surged into the #1 most valuable company slot. Nvidia overtook Apple entirely. Meta surged with Llama. Google doubled down with Gemini. But Apple stayed quiet, delayed, and at the back of the race. But look, Apple has all the money in the world. They have the brand. They have the ecosystem. They have the customer loyalty. So why can't they seem to get things straight? The answer reveals the core truth about Apple's downfall, and the real reason the empire is crumbling. Here's the hardest truth. Apple didn't fall because the other giants out-innovated them. Apple fell because Apple stopped innovating the way Apple used to. For decades, Apple was the company that invented the modern versions of the PC, the smartphone, the MP3 player, the tablet, the smartwatch. When they entered a category, they defined it. That was their superpower. They were the powerhouse. But Tim Cook recently said, "We've rarely been first." And he pointed to examples like the Mac following the PC, the iPhone following smartphones, and he tried to use that logic to justify Apple's late entry into AI. But the logic's backwards. Apple was the first in AI. They launched Siri in 2011. What they weren't was willing to reinvent it. And that unwillingness didn't come from laziness. It came from prioritizing margins, predictability, and short-term stock performance over daring product bets. This is why Apple's R&D trails behind its competitors. This is why Apple Vision Pro, despite brilliant engineering, launched in a half-baked market. This is why Apple Intelligence got announced years before it was ready. This is why innovation slowed while prices soared. This is why Apple went from number 1 to number 3 in global value. This is why even loyal customers feel disappointed. The tragedy is that Apple had every resource to dominate for decades to come. AI, AR, wearables, health tech, and automotive. Apple could have led all of it. Instead, they optimized the machine until the machine ran out of magic. So here's my question to you. Can a company that once reinvented entire industries reinvent itself? Can Apple rediscover the fire it had under Jobs? Can it shift from protecting its empire to building the next one? What's your take? I'd love to hear it. And if you want to stay ahead of how this story unfolds and support deep dive videos like this one, you already know what to do. A quick like and a subscribe goes a long way, because this story, it's not over. In fact, it's just getting interesting. Signing off for now.